Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day. Today we're making the Siberia Sponge from the popular anime The Wind Rises. So the Siberia Sponge is a layer of miso-yorkan, which is a kind of jelly made from red bean paste, which is then sandwiched between two layers of Castella Cake, which is just a very light sponge. So let me show you how to make it. So unlike some of the other videos I've seen, I'm going to make my red bean paste from scratch. So I actually found these Azuki Beans in the Whole Foods store that's just opened up in my town, so I thought I'd grab them and make this recipe. So to start, I soaked about 150 grams of Azuki Beans in cold water overnight for about 12 hours, and when I came back in the morning they were nice and plump. So I then drained off this water, added a bit more back in, and then just brought that to the boil for about 5 minutes. And from what I've read, this removes some of the bitter flavours from the bean paste. So I want to do this and then pour away the water to get rid of them flavours. I'm then going to refill the pot with water, just so the water level is about a couple of centimetres, 2 or 3 centimetres above the top of the Azuki beans. Bring that to the boil and then allow it to simmer for about an hour. We're looking for the beans to be nice and soft enough that you can squish them between your fingers and they break. So while that's simmering away, we're going to get started on the Castella Cake. So to do this, we're going to start off by measuring out 35 grams of all-purpose flour, and then in a separate bowl I'm going to melt 35 grams of butter in 35 grams of hot milk. Once it's dissolved, I'm going to add the milk and butter to the flour, mix it, and then add in 2 egg yolks, and then mix it again until it's thoroughly combined. Now in a separate bowl we're going to make a kind of meringue. So I've got 2 egg whites here, and I'm going to start whipping them until they become bubbly. When we get to that stage, I'm going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of Cream of Tartar, which helps to stabilise the air bubbles and makes the whipping process a lot easier, especially if you're doing it by hand. And just when that Cream of Tartar is broken up and I can no longer see any big lumps, add in 35 grams of caster sugar, and I'm going to beat this vigorously until we get to the firm peak stage. So this is where the meringue can hold its shape when I pull the whisk out of it. When we get to this point, I'm going to then fold that into the rest of the batter. I'm going to do it in 3 portions, the first one being significantly smaller, just to loosen up the batter, and then the following 2 portions are about 50% of what's left. Just gently folding this in, trying to pop as few air bubbles as possible, but making sure that everything is evenly combined. When I've gotten to that point, I'm going to pour it into my cake tin. This one here measures 110mm by 200mm, and I'm going to fill it to about a depth of 40mm. I've lined this with parchment paper on the side. This is going to help us get it out. It's also going to allow us to get a bit of browning on the edges. And I'm just going to pour this in very slowly, again trying not to pop in the air bubbles, and then just gently bang it on the table just to settle it. To ensure that this cooks evenly and gently, I'm going to put it into a water bath. So I've got a larger pan in the oven here, which is already preheated to 150 degrees. The water's been sat in there while the oven was preheating, so it's also pretty hot. I'm going to pop the cake tin directly into the pan so it sits in the water, and then bake that for 30 minutes at 150 degrees. And then when I came back later on, the top wasn't quite brown enough, so I took away the water bath, popped the cake tin back in, and then turned the oven up to 200 degrees and just cooked it for 5 minutes. And when I came back, the cake was nice and golden brown on top, so I took it out of the cake tin and just allowed it to cool on the side for about 20 minutes. Once my Azuki beans were cooked and they were nice and soft, there wasn't much water left in the pan, so I went straight ahead and blended them. I gave them a little taste just to see how sweet and bitter they were. So they did have a nice amount of flavour, but they weren't sweet at all. I've seen other recipes which use quite a lot of sugar, like 200 grams for this amount of beans, but I just tried 50 grams at a time, and actually after the first 50 grams of sugar I thought it was pretty sweet. It was nice enough, so I left it at that, just 50 grams. But I did also add in 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which I think really does help the flavour. It brings out them sweet notes, and you can actually taste the natural flavour of the Azuki beans better after you've added the salt, so I think that's quite important. I then measured 320 grams of bean paste into a separate bowl, and that's what we're going to use to fill the sponge. The rest I'll put into a little jar. I'm going to use that on toast and on porridge and stuff like that for breakfasts. So to make the miso-yorkan, we need to actually dilute the bean paste a little bit with water. So I added in 60 grams of cold water and just mix that together. And then in a separate cup I've got 40 grams of water, and I'm adding 5 grams of powdered agar-agar to it. We're going to leave that just to bloom, and then when we're ready we're going to pop that in the microwave and heat it for about 30 seconds or so until it starts to boil. We're going to whisk that quickly together and then pour that into the rest of the bean paste and just mix it together. Agar-agar needs to be boiled for it to actually be able to become gelatinous, so that's why we have to do this. And you want to do this right before you're ready to layer the cake, otherwise it's going to set on you. So I didn't actually put it in the microwave just yet, I waited and then cut my cake first. So you can see I've got the cake here, it's nice and cool now. I've taken off all the parchment paper, and I'm going to cut it straight in half then we're going to use one for the top and one for the bottom. So I brought back the cake tin and I've covered it with some cling film. This is going to help us contain all of the jelly in the cake. So I put one piece of cake, the most brown side down, on the bottom. And I've got this little tinfoil divider that I made just by folding up some tinfoil that I'm going to pop halfway in, and then fill the other side up with my leftover Azuki beans just to help hold everything steady. So now we're ready to make the bean paste. So I popped that water and agar into the microwave for 30 seconds, mixed it, poured it into my bean paste and water, mixed that again, and then poured however much I thought I needed into the cake tin. And I probably only used about half of this, but the rest of it went into the fridge. And I'm going to chop this into blocks because this is actually how it would be traditionally served in Japan as a wagashi, which is kind of like a Japanese sweet. So either way, once I got the bean paste on top, I put the other cake this side, light side down, so the most golden brown side is facing out, and then covered it with cling film and then popped it in the fridge. Here's the cake after it's set up. So I just pulled it out of the cling film and set it onto the side, and then I'm taking the sharpest knife that I've got. My brother got me this for Christmas, it's a super sharp one. And we're going to trim the edges, all 4 edges, just to make a nice clean side so it's more presentable. When I've got this nice little square here, just to finish off, we're going to chop diagonally from corner to corner, and then pop them up on their sides as it's done in the anime. I've got a little bit of parchment paper here. I actually tried to find some newspaper to wrap it in as well, like in the anime, but we didn't have any in the house, so the parchment paper will have to do. But I think it looks pretty good in the end. It's not got the same look as some of the other recipes on here because the store-bought red bean paste, kind of red bean jelly, it's a lot darker in colour and it's more translucent. This is a red bean paste I made from scratch. I controlled everything, the amount of sugar, the amount of salt, and I don't think it was that much extra work to do. And these red beans taste great. I'm going to use them in so many things. I've got extra stuff for breakfast and stuff, so I think it's a nice thing to make. Either way, I hope you all enjoyed the video and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.